Hey everybody, thanks for listening to Positive Connections Radio. This is episode 66, My Disease Wants Me Dead, with firefighter Keith Vitale. Do you know what life looks like in active recovery? Well, listen to my friend Keith Vitale and you'll be on your way. Keith shares his experience, strength, and hope about what life was like in a disease of alcoholism and how it's changed. Because he decided to get honest with himself and others, he now lives a life free from addiction and mental anguish. I am so stoked to be back. It's been a couple months. I want to tell you guys, recovery is not a quick fix. If you go into it half-assed, you'll not have a good run at it and will likely continue to live your life in distress, torment, loss, and heartache. Remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. One day at a time, and that's all we have is now. Depression, it lives in the past, and anxiety lives in the future, so stay present. Taking direction from others is difficult if you think your way is the only way you want to go. It takes courage to drop your fists and admit your ass was kicked. Surrender. Surrender does not mean defeat. It means moving over to the winning side. If you want to keep fighting and somehow you'll win, that's your choice. Do you really have a choice to stop on your own and live your life as if this was just a phase or something you want to forget? I tried that and the hand of God struck me down. I needed to be beaten, broken, and scarred before I decided to stop fighting. I really only had a few other options, one actually, and that's death. Thankfully, I found a way out and vowed to share how I did it with others. These may be harsh words to hear if you're suffering and just angry at the world. If it stings, then you're in the right place. Remember, untreated mental health issues wants to kill you. This is not a game. This is not a trick or a promotional fantasy. This is life, and this world needs you in it. You're not alone, and you're worth it, no matter what your rabbit mind tells you. Don't believe the lies. Come all the way in and sit all the way down with both sides of your ass. Welcome to Positive Connections Radio. This is Mike Cook. This podcast is directed towards first responders and others who may be suffering in silence and are fearful to ask for help. You're not alone. You don't have to lose it all in order to get help. Trust yourself, stand up, and break the stigma. Hey everybody, welcome back to Positive Connections Radio. This is Mike Cook, and I got a good friend of mine here, Keith Vitale from Southern California. We're going to share our experience, strength, and hope with you about recovery. And welcome to the show, Keith. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a little while since I've been on last, so living life on life's terms. But I'm glad that you're on the show and working as a first responder. I know you are in Southern California. There's a lot of things that come up during our careers, and you've experienced a lot of stuff too, especially related to alcoholism. So why don't you, if you can, just go over your experience, strength, and hope as it relates to your recovery and, how it was like, what happened, and what's like now.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I was raised here in Southern California, born in 1965, getting up there a little bit. I'm 57 now, so been in the fire service this is my 23rd year. But raised in Southern California, pretty middle income family, lived pretty comfortable, both hardworking parents. Pretty average kid through elementary school, junior high, high school, and all that. Played sports and everything, and nothing real crazy in my upbringing. But for some reason, I don't know what, only maybe the man above knows, I started experimenting around with alcohol at, as far as I can remember, clearly remember, about 12, middle school age.
How'd you get into it at 12 years old? Because I experienced the same thing, and for me, it was more of like peer pressure type of stuff at that age.
I don't think it was, really peer pressure. For me, it was more just the curiosity, I believe. It was the curiosity of what this liquid was going to do. And apparently I liked it. You know what I mean? I liked the feeling. I don't remember, my first experience with it being, devastating to where, I got sick and swore I would never do that again, kind of a thing. Maybe I was my worst enemy in that, I kind of did it with a little bit of, like control, and didn't just go crazy right off the bat. And, I can remember liking the effects and then wanting more of it. And then, high school, a little bit, not so much in junior high, but in high school, everything started kind of surrounding the activities that we did kind of, was surrounded by alcohol. Dances. I remember we couldn't go to dances unless we had a cooler full of beer, wine, whatever it was. We couldn't go to a football game. We couldn't do anything without having it. And I say we because it was most of the kids that I hung out with, we all partied, but it always just kind of seemed like we would never plan to do something and then say, oh, well, we don't have the beer or the wine or whatever. That's okay. We could do without it. That was never the case. So, again, it was to us, that was normal. And us, I mean, the kids I was hanging out with in school and stuff. So, and I mean, I got in trouble a little bit in school, like we got caught with a cooler at prom, and they basically cut I think I was in wrestling at the time, and they said, you're out 2 weeks of wrestling or whatever, It wasn't anything crazy. Never got expelled or anything, but yeah, high school. And then I ended up working right out of high school. I went to, I was like 19 years old, and I got a fire job in Wilmington at a oil refinery, and was making really good money. And long story short, I was driving on the freeway a lot, and I hated the traffic. So I wanted to get out of California. So I moved to Washington State for like 7 years. It didn't stop. Like everything that we did, I was rodeoing, I was in agriculture, I was hanging around with like some rodeo cowboys, and those guys can definitely, they know how to party. It was every weekend, every day after work. And I ended up meeting up with my wife there. We got together. We came back to California because she's from Venice Beach originally. We lived in Paso Robles up at Lake Nacimiento. Out of a dare, kind of, we were at a picnic, and she asked me, "I dare you to get back in the fire department." And I was like, "Nah, I don't want to deal with the politics and this and that. So I'm good with doing what I think I was doing concrete at the time, and I was making good money. But again, I was partying, drinking every night, basically never stopped. So I ended up signing up for the fire department again after a little hiatus. And 2000, I got hired. I didn't really know, because I was in a refinery setting the first time, so I didn't really have public service, exposure. And then I was 30. Hope there's no number crunchers out there, but I was around my mid 30s. I was in my mid 30s when I got into the fire service, public service this time. I experienced a couple of, some pretty severe calls. Not so much. I started in St. Louis, and then I ended up coming down here to Southern California and Riverside. About 3 years in St. Louis. When I came to Riverside, and just kind of a disclaimer for, anybody and for my story, I just kind of want to reiterate before I get started, I never once blamed the fire department for what I experienced and what I'm still experiencing. And I never I never use it as an excuse for what happened, because, and I stand by this 100%, because it's the job that I chose. I very well could have seen some really awful stuff in the beginning and said, no, this isn't for me. I don't think that would have, curbed my drinking, but I wouldn't have had, I wouldn't have been on my road to filling my backpack up, if you will.
Mm-hmm. You're
Um,
talking about on-job trauma and
yeah.
critical
So on the
incidences that we face.
right. So, and at first, like everybody, I was looking after patients and seeing, following up, because my heart was huge, and not that it's not huge now. It's just that in the beginning, you tend to get a little bit more personal with the calls, if you will, over the years, and then maybe because I don't know if it's compassion fatigue.
Oh, compassion fatigue. Yeah, for sure.
Compassion fatigue kind of set in. But anyway, so back where a little bit earlier, like I wanted to mention that I don't blame the job for what happened. So I came here down south and I've worked at very, very busy firehouses. And I just started to see a lot of stuff that we see, trauma, calls involving kids, and everything from the most minor to the absolute 100% worst stuff we could ever see. And I honestly don't remember when it really kicked in because, as I mentioned, I had always had kind of a alcoholic background, if you will. And then, so it's probably been, I'd say about the last 5 years, 6 years that it had gotten out of control. I never did anything at work, never will, never would, never drank at work, never did anything. And I'm purely alcohol. I never dabbled in any kind of pills because I know my personality and that I'm just wide open, 100%. When I start something, I don't half-ass it. I go to the fullest, and I didn't want to ever rely on narcotic pills or anything, or marijuana. I just solely drank alcohol, and mostly hard, high alcohol content beers. I never really dabbled that much with mixed drinks.
It's accepted too in the fire service and just the first responder realm as a whole
Sure.
to drink. We use that as a coping skill for the trauma we face. And yeah, like you said, we got hired doing this job. We were the top 1% that were able to get employed in a fire service or any other first responder field. You're sort of expected to deal with this, but yeah, we are human. And if we don't know how to cope with our emotions and we keep shoving it in that backpack, pretty soon it's going to come to a head where, it's overfilling and we don't know what to do. And if we only know what to do is drinking over it, then our life becomes totally unmanageable and the wheels start falling off the train and we crash and burn.
Yeah, for sure. So, I had right at the end, and I say the end because it was, let's see, August 17th, 20, shit, my dates are all messed up. Let me see here. August 18th. So I've got I got a year and 3 months, 460 days sober.
Sweet, man. Congratulations.
So, thank you. So it all kind of came to a head. I was on duty. I just wasn't right for quite a while. Months. I wasn't right. I got into an argument with a fellow at work about a work-related issue, and I got out of work. I drove straight to the liquor store, 7:30 in the morning. I got 3 tall boys for the drive home, which is about 40 minutes. And by the time I got home at like 9 o'clock, I was well on my way. And then I was sitting at the kitchen table and I had 2 options. Use the phone or use something else. And I chose to use the phone. I called our employee support services. I had no idea how that call was going to go. And I told the guy, who ended up being a pretty good friend of mine after the fact, that I need to go somewhere. I cannot be prescribed an AA meeting right now. I need to go somewhere. I don't care if it's Uganda. I need to go somewhere for treatment. And he's like, all right, are you safe? And I said, well, right now that I'm talking to you, I'm safe. He goes, can you give me 10 minutes? I said, yes, no longer.
Yeah.
I can't give you 15, but I can give you 10. He goes, don't worry, I got you. If I don't get a hold of the people that I'm trying to get a hold of, I'll call you back in 10 minutes. So he ended up calling First Responder Wellness in Newport Beach, California. Got me in, and he called me back within 10 minutes, and he said, we'll have a car there for you in about 2 hours. Are you good to wait? I said, yeah, absolutely. So it was on that day, August 17th, 21, I first stopped drinking. And then I found out a lot through their awesome EMDR program and neuro that a lot of my issues stemmed from youth. One thing that I was really surprised was a lot of my trauma was trauma that I had been involved in. Like I got in a head-on collision and on the freeway in 2001 and almost died. And that trauma was probably one of the biggest life traumas that I've ever experienced. And it completely had to do with me. Mm-hmm. The fact that I never really considered it was because I just kind of healed from it and then kind of pushed it aside. But it was crazy during EMDR, and I'll probably never forget this as long as I live. The therapist could tell that there was something going on like in the back of my head. And I started to like break down and this person asked me what was going on. I said, I'm honestly running flashbacks of the head-on collision that I got into on the interstate, 80 miles an hour to 80 miles an hour head on. This person was like, go ahead, like let it all out. Mm-hmm. And I just broke down like a freaking 5-year-old got his candy taken away from him, or worse. It was a very big relief, I guess, to deal with it and to realize that was something that was, really weighing me down. And a lot of the work-related stuff that we would go over, it was the major incidents, like the deaths that I've experienced with fellas that I work with. Those were huge. A couple of the incidents where I was ultimately in control of the incident and, maybe something had gone wrong or whatever, I had carried that burden. Right. And what we found too, which is happening quite a bit in the fire service, is the officers after a critical incident are making sure that the fellas are good, but they're forgetting about one really important person, and that's the officers. They're carrying all this shit, and then they're finding out that not so much while they're still working, because they're still kind of in the work mode, week to week, month to month, year to year. But when they retire and they're out of the picture, then this stuff just starts eating at them. Yeah. And remembering calls. And that was one of the other reasons why I wanted to get help, was because I was looking into the future and what kind of a retirement that I would actually have, as a 23-year plus first responder who's an alcoholic with no treatment, and just kind of wipe my hands together and, oh, there's my career. Now what do I do?
Right.
So I was able to, with the help of a lot of the therapists, kind of empty my backpack, if you will. And, I have a little bit different outlook on work. I still give everybody the same treatment that they, deserve, but I don't get too involved mentally, if you will. They get 100% of me while I'm on the call, but when it's done, I just,
What are you doing for yourself? What are you doing for yourself now? Because, you get to the scene and you take care of whatever you need to take care of course, and you're going to be, having traumatic incidences happen. But what's different now that you're doing that you didn't do before that caused you to sort of spiral out of control?
Well, I think the biggest thing is right now is the fact that I'm sober, and I don't have, the backup plan to a traumatic incident that I go to. Like before, I would just kind of deal with it, and then I would get off duty, drown my whatever's away, right?
Mhm.
But now that I'm sober, I kind of prepare myself that, okay, I'm on this call, so I need to, initiate it, get it done, follow through, and then close it, close the call.
Mhm.
Because when I get home, I don't have to medicate. Um,
What do you do instead now? Because after a call and you say you close it out, but like, do you go back and just sort of like process it anyway? Do you do any kind of, do you have any tools that you learn that other people might be able to learn from that you get through that situation? Because yeah, alcohol is always going to be there. That's the quick escape from it all. But
sure.
what have you learned and what kept you sober? I mean, you say you've had 400 and something days sobriety. A lot of people can't get 400 and something minutes of sobriety.
Yeah.
What's going on with that?
Well, the biggest thing with that is, and I'll get back to how I deal with the calls, but the biggest thing with that is I want my sobriety more than I want to self-medicate.
Hmm.
There's nothing that I'm going to see, hopefully, or a situation that I'm going to deal with that is basically going to rob me of my sobriety. And the way that I deal with it differently now, because I don't self-medicate when I get off duty, is I try to put a close to that call, whatever it takes. If I'm the officer on that call, and I make sure the fellas are good, and we really talk about it, and then if I think, hey, I need to talk to somebody, I might turn to them, because they're human too. I mean,
Sure.
they're not children, and talk to them about it. Or I might go a little bit higher and give the chief a phone call and say, hey chief, check it out, I just went to this and kind of having an issue with dealing with it, and what do you got for me? He's like, oh, we'll talk about it, and just kind of have a little minor therapy session, if you will, and then kind of make sure that everybody's good, and go on. And it was something that I wasn't doing before. It was keep stuffing it and stuffing it and stuffing it and filling the backpack. And people can only handle so much. It doesn't matter what occupation you're in. I just think it's really important to try and do everything that we can to not light our fuse. It's like you almost have to put up a defense mechanism where, I'm not going to let this situation, take control of me and push me to my breaking point again,
Hmm.
because I know what that breaking point looks like, and it's ugly. And a lot of it too is my program. My program is Alcoholics Anonymous. As you know, I wasn't I wasn't being stubborn about AA when I first got into treatment. It was just that I've always been very organized in that I line everything up. So when I went into treatment, I kind of wanted to figure out what was going on with Keith. Like, what's making Keith do this?
Right.
I got a little bit of little handle on that with the help of the therapist. And then, then came my next step. You would ask me, hey, did you get a sponsor yet? And I'm like, no, because I wanted it to be very, very important. My
Hmm.
first sponsor. As much as I love you, I didn't want to just appease you by saying, oh yeah, I got this dude, I don't even know him. And, you know,
Right.
I wanted to make sure, like me, typical Keith, putting every duck in a row. And, I got a buddy that I've known for 30 years who's got 32 years sober, and he's a godsend to me.
Hmm. Oh, I remember
Uh,
the days, and you were you wanted to do it right, and I understand you wanted to do it right the first time. You didn't want to have to come back. You didn't want to
yeah,
have to go out and relapse and then take suggestions. You took suggestions and you did it, and I think the most miraculous thing about all this is you making that phone call. You first
yeah,
making that phone call and sitting there at your table, after work and drinking, Did you hear about that your department or anybody else would offer you help as being a first responder, or do you feel like there was help available? Because obviously you knew a little bit about it, and you felt safe enough to call your people to get you help.
Yeah. So through work, we have a program that's employee support services, and it was kind of a question mark to me, to be honest, because in officer training, you get basically a phone number,
Right.
And they go over a little bit about what they cover and what areas they can treat their employees in, and it was a little bit of a crapshoot, to be honest. I didn't know because I never directly dealt with them, but we had another one, which is like you can get therapists for like 7 sessions or something like that, and I had already done that with my wife, kind of like a couples counseling thing, because we were having issues, and I didn't want to go that route. I wanted to go the treatment route, and I guess I kind of made that call blind. It was kind of a blind call. And then
It's something like a leap of faith with you, I mean, with us, we don't trust many people, especially at recovery, and a lot of times, it keeps us sick. Or sick is your secrets. That's another term that we use a lot in recovery, but we don't want it to get back to the department. You know how we talk about each other, and there's lots of gossip and rumors going around, and we feel like it's a weakness sometimes to ask for help, but we're more than willing to sacrifice our lives for anybody that needs help. Even
sure.
And we forget to look at ourselves. So I think it's super commendable for you to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And fortunately, the times are turning in that 15 years ago in my career, this was unheard of.
Right.
If you asked for help, you were considered weak, and you were mocked, and you were pushed aside, and the tables have turned in that now. If somebody's having a true issue with drugs, alcohol, drugs, whatever it be, and it might be job related, and they ask for help, they're actually considered strong. It's positive change for the public service industry. And because of that, there's a lot more people reaching out. And I was just one of them. But yeah, like I said, my program is so strong, and that my AA guys have been a huge part of my program. A lot of it me and doing the work, which is never ending. It's daily, as we all know in AA. But some people aren't blessed, I believe, to have strong support groups, and then they end up falling back on their selves, and the strength, and maybe, or willpower that they have, and ultimately that just ends up typically taking them out again and again.
Isn't it amazing? Because I know some of the groups that you go to, I've been to them too. Some are online, and I just think it's just amazing the support. No matter where you're from, whether you're a first responder or whatever job you're doing, you work for Amazon, you have the same common denominator, and you're treated just like anybody else. I mean, you're in recovery. That's all. The whole new requirement is that the desire to stop drinking, the desire to make life better for yourself and your family, and even emotional sobriety too. I put that into play in my life. That I haven't drank for a long time. Well, how's my emotional state? How's my spiritual state? Where's that balance in my life? So I think over time, once you get over the substance and you're able to get through that, detox phase and learn a program of recovery and get into something like, Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever it is, smart recovery, refuge recovery, something, and know that, myself will run riot, given to my own devices and wanting to do it alone. Yeah, it's very possible you can lose everything before you find recovery. It's available for anybody, however old you are, what rank you hold. I've worked with a lot of ranked officers in first responder fields, and it's amazing. Like you said, it's starting to change over the last 5 or 10 years, that it's become more appropriate and acceptable, and even required in some departments. And there's some departments still that are sort of standoffish and they're sort of old school ways, but it's coming around. It really is, because we need help, just like we're there for other people to help.
Yeah, for sure. And that brings up a couple things that, you mentioned the rank. I mean, that's one thing I've noticed since, I started my treatment and, my AA program. Alcoholism absolutely shows no rank whatsoever. As we know, it'll take out, a rookie cop or a boot fireman as quickly as it'll take out a 5-star chief. And therefore it makes it easier, I think, for these guys, once they realize that we're all in the same playing field, to ask for help. Because that, first year boot fireman that comes in, might be in his mid-20s. You don't know what's going on with that kid for the last 20 years.
No.
You don't know where his family life is. You don't know anything about that kid. Even in a psych, you're not going to really get to the meat and potatoes of it, because they want a job. They're going to withhold information. They're going to, whatever it takes to get that job. And then you're taking on this individual, who could be a 30-year-old with a vet. Right. And his backpack's already half full. He hasn't even started the job yet.
Yep.
So, this has taught me a lot more than just how not to use alcohol as a drug to soothe, in that it's really taught me to look at individuals a lot more eyes wide open to what they might be going through. And no matter the rank, to look at the individual, as the individual. And I didn't used to do that. I was one of the long-term firefighters. I was a firefighter in the position for 15 years. So I was a senior firefighter before I promoted, and I was one of the old, they call them the old school dudes that, fire eaters, whatever you want to call it. But I didn't take shit from anybody, and I've changed my outlook on look at the individual and not the position, if you will. And just, I guess a little clearer thinking, not just one track. So there's a lot of things in the, positive that I could take out of the experience that I've been through in the last year and 3 months. And it's funny because I was helping this gal. She wanted to try to get into a program, and she had I think she had 90 days. And I was talking to her. She had 90 days sober, and I was talking to her, and she said, "Hey Keith, do you ever miss drinking?" And I said, "I miss drinking every day. I would love to have a beer right now, but I want my sobriety more than I want to drink." I said, "Just because you're sober," to this girl I was talking to, I said, "just because you're sober doesn't mean that your brain stops thinking about things that you used to like or enjoy." And it kind of, the human brain will filter out all the bad stuff that happened while we were using, and we'll only look at the good and the good times we were celebrating. And yeah, that was all great and everything, but then there's a lot of bad that comes with it. Family, relationships, workmates, whatever, on and on and on. So do I think about it every day? Man, not every day, but often. I'm only human. And like I said, I enjoy my sobriety. I want my sobriety. I fear going back, because just in Keith fashion, I will go 110%, and it won't be good. It'll be ugly. And I want my family and my sanity more than I want to drink. And I think I'll hold true to that as long as I'm sober. I've found that it just makes every situation a lot more manageable. We all know that at times life gets lifey, and we have some life stuff going on. As a sober person, you don't have that crutch,
Mm-hmm.
that extra little skin in the game to like pull you out of something. You have to do it on your own. You have to look at the facts. You got to take out a pen and paper and put a line in down the middle of it and put the pros and the cons. And you got to figure it out old school. There's nothing wrong with that. I've still been, to funerals. I've still dealt with family situations sober. It's, I guess what I'm trying to say is being sober doesn't make any of those situations that we have to still deal with, any harder. We just don't have that coping mechanism like we used to. We just have to find different coping mechanisms. And, one thing that I learned from one of the fellas at Simple was if you're going to go to one of these functions, it might have a lot of alcohol at it, be a wedding or whatever. You got to set yourself up for success. Like, if you want to have a non-alcoholic beer or you want to have, your own soda or whatever it is, and do that. And then set a time parameter, hey, I'm going to come here and I'm not going to close the place down like I used to.
Mm-hmm.
So there's subtle changes, but
Have an exit plan. I mean, that's a big
100%.
thing around the holidays. If we set up an exit plan, so we're new to sobriety, even after a year or two. I mean, you still might be thinking about it. If you might find yourself in a situation or agree to be in a situation like a family gathering or a friend's birthday party, which they might be drinking and they might have their own issues too, but you don't want to drink. Have an exit plan. If you're going with people, and they're probably going to stay longer, maybe take a separate ride, have Uber all set up, ready to go, have a code word that you can tell your loved ones, hey, if I say this word, we don't have to explain why I'm out of here. I need to
Yeah.
go. There's nothing to explain, this whatever. Have that set up, and you might not need it, but it's there just in case it gets to that point. Like you say, you think about it a lot. Over time, it lessens the thoughts of drinking, and I can't think of any one good reason that would bring me to drink, and nothing can make me drink. I can drink myself, so it's my choice now. And with time, it does get better. And like you said about living life on life's terms, and yeah, I'm sober, but stuff still goes on. There's a lot of shit going on that I have to deal with, but I'm thankful that I get to deal with it with a clear head. I'm sober. I'm not thinking about, I can't wait till 5 o'clock. I can't wait to, take a couple shots before I go to bed so I have a good night's sleep. I don't have to worry about that anymore. It's
Yeah.
and waking up in the morning sober every single day, it's a blessing for sure.
Yeah. And, it was, my decision was taken pretty well by, I'd say, a majority of my family, a couple individuals in my family that, might have felt a little responsible for what happened to me. I've talked to them about it, and basically, I've said, I am who I am. My upbringing was what it was. There's nothing that I can do about it now. I said, this isn't about trying to pinpoint what happened and where it went wrong and point blame. I said, there's no good that comes out of blaming somebody, because it was just, I was a 40-year drinker. I mean, or more, like 45-year drinker.
It's so easy to blame somebody else for things.
Yeah. So, I just kind of look at it like, I'm going to tell you of my situation, tell you how I'm dealing with it. And, this is where I am, whether you believe that I should be there or not, as a family member, looking back at me and, my upbringing and my career choice and what have you. Like, I've been out of the house since I was 17 years old. So, and I never went back, as a parent. And I even put myself in these folks' shoes that I'm speaking of. maybe as a parent, you look at yourself like, whoa, where did I go wrong?
Right.
What could I have done to, avoided this? And I guess the only thing that I kind of, came out of that was you did the best you could. For the last 40 plus years, you have a child living on this earth by themselves. You have no control over them anymore. So kind of whatever happens, happens. Like you said, I'm not trying to blame anybody. I'm not trying to blame the job. I'm not trying to blame anybody. It's just the way the cookies crumbled.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a situation that had been a long time coming, and I needed help, or I was going to do drastic measures.
And you're
you
one of
know,
and you're one of the 3%, Keith. I mean, not many of us get sober, work on ourselves, work on childhood trauma, get to have an opportunity or even the will to ask for help to begin with. A very small percentage of people actually maintain their sobriety, over a year and continue it. For you or anybody else, the loved ones, their family members, their children, even though there's been wreckage of the past, you're moving forward in a positive where you're working a good program of recovery. You are working on yourself and you pass that on to your children. You pass that on to your family members. And whether they like it or not, it's none of my business. My business is what I think about myself, not what other people think about me. Because if I'm honest and I'm working the best program that I can and I'm fallible, I make mistakes all the time, but I do it sober. I just know that, hey, that was a bad mistake. It's a lot better than my mistakes that I made when I was drinking. It's
yeah,
definitely a difference, and it's a blessing to actually get into this and to ask for help, because a lot of people are probably listening right now. They're stuck somewhere, or they're not really wanting to look at it. Like, I just drink a little bit. I just want to learn how to control my drinking. I know for a fact, if I go back to drinking, it's my choice. It won't be controlled. It might be controlled for maybe a couple days, a couple weeks, maybe even a couple months. But I will hit that point. Every time I drink, I can't guarantee what the outcome is going to be.
yeah,
So I just don't drink, because I know one of those 5 times I'm going to, the wheel's going to fall off and I'm not going to come back.
sure. Yeah, 100%. And we all hear about it in our programs. And also, I wanted to state that, I'm very involved with AA, like I said earlier, and by no means, is this advertising for AA. I believe those other programs that are out there, could work for an individual. I'm not familiar with them, and I chose AA, and that's just the one that I use. But I've been in it for a year plus now, and I've seen guys that come in and they go out, and unfortunately, most of the fellas, and I say fellas because I'm in a men's stag group, they pass for whatever reason. The odds are against the individual that has a tough time with staying sober on whatever it is. The percentage, you probably know better than I, but the percentage of, I think, most people staying in a program and staying sober in the country is like 1%.
Yeah, what I gather is that between 1% and 3% of people stay
Yeah,
sober after a year. If you're able to go into an inpatient wherever it is, 30 days is you're just touching it.
yeah,
60 days you're going to be getting into trauma work. You're going to be really working on yourself. You might be diving into your childhood issues, the stuff that as you kept a secret your whole life. Once you feel that you trust people enough, or a therapist, or a counselor or a friend enough that you can actually talk about this stuff. And then, 90 days and above, when you have that kind of recovery, and, I know that you've got a lot of treatment behind you, and me too. And I'm lucky that I get to work in the field and also have my outside program, which is AA also. But like you said, there are other programs. There's Smart Recovery, there's Refuge Recovery, there's Life Ring, there's Celebrate Recovery, and then 12-step recovery. Those 5 I would recommend,
yeah.
and look into them, because one of those might work for you. But get something, get something. Just if you do it on your own, the chances are it's not going to turn out right.
Right. And it's funny because you bring up a really good point, and I was one of them that went into treatment, and one of the first questions that they ask you is, how long do you plan on being here?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, if I was in treatment, I'm sure I would hear every day, oh, 30 days. That's all I
Right.
need. I just need a detox and I'm good. And I'll be back out on the streets. Like you said, you haven't even started
Yeah.
after 30 days, after 15, 20 days. You're just starting to cleanse your liver,
Mm-hmm.
let alone start cleansing your mind. And there's a reason that a lot of these patients that are in treatment, they get a little anxious. They want, quick neuro, and they want to go to EMDR right off the bat. Well, there's a reason that these programs take some time,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to learn a lot about yourself. You have to be stable for this stuff to start working. You have to basically be rid of whatever substance was taking over your life, your body, and it's a long process. And in the beginning, of course, I looked at it like, yeah, give me 30 days, 60 max, and I'm good. I need to get back to work. I need to get back to my family.
Got stuff to do, man.
Got stuff to do. Yeah. But ultimately, at the end of my treatment, I looked at it in a different light, in that I looked at it like, relax, Keith. You're here.
Mm-hmm.
You're here now. Get the full extent of the program. Get to the point with your therapists and doctors and whoever it is that's involved in your program there, and let them make the decisions for once. Stop making the decisions.
Yeah.
There's a reason why, there's a cost behind it, and there's a lot of schooling and there's a lot of education that goes into running programs like that. The people that are there have seen hundreds of Keiths come through, thousands,
Mm-hmm.
and they know when you're healed. They know when you're going to be okay. They know when they can offer you an aftercare program. And typically it's not at 30 days. It's not at 60 days. We've lived like this for 30, 40 years.
Right.
It's not going to go away in 2 months. And sometimes that's a hard pill for people to swallow that are new to treatment. But it should be a time that we actually hand over the reins. The way I look at it is,
Mm-hmm.
hand over the reins for a while, and let somebody steer. We've been steering long enough. We've been steering off cliffs.
Right.
Let somebody else figure out what the hell's going on. And then it's going to take a lot of work from you. Once you get out, it's tons of work. I've worked way harder in the last 6 months than I did while I was in treatment.
Treatment is, you're building your foundation. You're
Sure.
starting off like, that's the biggest thing about recovery. It's having a solid foundation. You burnt the house down. The house is gone. Now you have your foundation. How are you going to rebuild your house? Are you going to rebuild it? Yeah, I'm going to rebuild it. Okay, so in some of our cases, let's get the detox. Let's get this out of our system. Let's work on our mental health, and then start building the walls back up again and make them stronger. And you find out after staying long enough, don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle happens. That's a really good term to use, because it will happen, but it probably won't be 5 minutes. It might be 5 days. It might be 5 months. It might be 5 years. It might be 50 years of, the rest of your life building on that foundation, and you don't ever have to go back, destroy it again. That's the biggest thing. And that's what you're doing. And you're passing it off to other people also. And, it's a simple program, they'd say, but it's not easy. You have to do the work. You just can't sit on your butt all day and expect, every day to be butterflies and sunshine.
Yeah, for sure. And so I got into, my AA program, like I said, and I ended up getting my sponsor, who's just an amazing guy, always there for me. I've taken on a lot of commitments. I'm chairing a meeting on Wednesdays, as you know, and
Mm-hmm.
I've actually been able to kind of refocus some of my attention at work on the peer support program, where I've been able to give back a little bit, what I've learned about treatment, about substance abuse, and it's a huge program, and I'm very honored to be part of it. And I I wanted to be one of those guys that in the peer support where like I had questions when I first made that phone call. If somebody was to call me in the same end of their rope, I could tell them what they have to look forward to, how they need to prepare, what they need to do prior to going, and not based on reading it out of a manual.
Right. You experienced it. You've lived it. You're
I
living it.
and you know, the other thing that I've learned too is this is just the way that I, you know, kind of fell into it, if you will, and it worked for me. It might not work for everybody else. They might have to take a little different avenue. I've been a little more of a listener to people that might have an issue where I'm finding myself, you know, relying a lot on alcohol to get through maybe the last year or two of my life. You know, what do you think I could do? Well, let me give you some options.
Hmm.
You know, you can get into a couple AA meetings if you want to try that route, or you can go to treatment. You could talk to somebody, you know, through insurance and find out what your options are. You tell me what you think will work for you, that kind of a thing.
Hmm.
Because I think, you know, us prior to going to treatment, we're always told by everybody that, you know, this is what you do or you're doomed.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I mean? So there's no options, and everybody wants options. I mean, look at us now, the way we shop. I mean, everything that we do, you know, we have options.
Yeah.
We have reviews. We want to talk to somebody about it. We don't want to find out the wrong way. And the same goes for somebody that, you know, has a substance issue. But I think the main thing that you know, I just tell individuals is it's an all or nothing program. You can't half-ass it,
Right.
because if you do, you'll end up going back. And I guess the first question that, you know, people should be asked that might be seeking treatment is, do you really want to quit whatever substance you're relying on? And you'll have 100 different replies. And ultimately, if somebody really truly wants to quit whatever it is, they can quit. I believe every person on this earth, you know, has the ability, and we've seen a lot of success stories. We've seen a lot of not so successful stories.
It's so easy to be discouraged too and distracted. You know, once we're sober, you know, once I was sober, I was like, oh, I'm good. I can get this now. It's been 2, 3 weeks. You know, I'm still working. I still have, you know, my house and my cars and my employment. I'm good. You know, I'm
Yeah.
just going to do a little bit. But like you said, it's available to everybody, just if they're able to be honest and trust themselves. You know, when you hit rock bottom, you know that because you put down the shovel. You know, the shovel's still there, but you just decide not to dig anymore and do it all the way. And, you know, work on your resentments, work on your own program, and you become a better person. I mean, anybody can stop drinking. Anybody can stop using drugs. Anybody can stop using violence or anger, but maintaining that, it
Yeah.
really helps to have support, because your chances are so much greater than maintaining it. And like you say, I mean, I'm sure your life is a lot better than it was before when you were drinking. But
Oh yeah, for
but,
sure.
but there's still things that happen in life, and you deal with it sober and a clear
Yeah.
mind.
Well, and I kind of look at it like you know, like an unbalanced wheel on a car. You know,
Hmm.
if you can run around day and night on an unbalanced wheel, but inevitably it's going to destroy your suspension, the
Yeah.
rest of your, you know, the frame, the body, the interior is going to start falling out of it. Like, and you get that wheel balanced, and your whole car runs perfectly smooth.
Hmm.
Now, that's not to say that your car is not going to hit a bump every once in a while, but but when it does, you go back to smooth. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And I kind of look at my life now as there's going to be bumps, 100%. But like you said earlier, you're able to, you know, get through them sober, make clear thoughts, make clear decisions. It's night and day. And yeah, I mean, I don't regret it at all. I'm still early. You know, I'm not
Hmm.
pink clouding, but you know, I think I've just gotten enough sobriety under my belt to where, I'm a little bit dangerous right now because I'm thinking,
Hmm.
I got this, like you said, and I know I'm smart enough to know that I don't. It's a daily process, and yeah, I'm still working. I'm thinking about retiring next year, but I don't know. I'm still running with the 20-year-old, so I I have a hard time seeing the day where I don't have to go to work. I'm probably going to have to get a little side,
Well, look at you.
part-time job.
Well, look at you now, though. Just like you said earlier in the program, is that a lot of us go through our whole careers and we don't set up for a retirement. We
Yeah,
we get to the point we might be drinking already, but a lot of us, when we retire within 5 years, if we start drinking, a good proportion of us end up dying.
for
In our
sure.
disease.
Yeah,
Suicides there all the time. I mean, countless of us are dying by our own hands, and it's really sad because there's a way out,
yeah,
and it's not that way. It's a permanent solution for a temporary problem, and we don't seem to realize that. But listening to you and other people listening to you too, you still are employed. You're looking at your recovery. You're looking at your future when you leave, and you know where to go. It's not you're
yeah,
not going to be maybe you are, but I don't think you're going to be taken off somewhere and it's like disappearing. I people that I put on this show, just like you, I like to wait at least till they're they have some sobriety underneath them. And I know you're solid, man. I mean, I know when I first met you, I knew that you wanted it. You really
sure.
did, and you took it and ran, and you ask a lot of questions and you work on yourself. But yeah, at this stage, it's a little dangerous. Your pink cloud, can continue. I mean, the serenity that you feel for it, but to maintain it,
Sure.
just don't walk away from it. That's the biggest thing.
Right. Yeah, and it's funny because I think back to some of the fellas that are on the meeting, these guys that get, maybe a month or two under their belts, and they're telling everybody, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
You better do it this way or you're gonna fail. It's like,
Hmm.
and I'm not the one that's gonna, you know, jump down their throat or anything, but um it's just life, it's you find that everywhere, and it's funny because I'm just getting like my sponsor has, like I said, has almost 33 years, and he's still on a day
Yeah.
day
That's
to
all we
day.
have, man. That's all we have. Yesterday is the past. Tomorrow we don't know what's going to happen. But I know today, I woke up sober, and I plan on staying sober and going to bed sober. And tomorrow the same thing. One day at a time. That's it.
100%. Yeah.
Well, we're closing up, man. Any kind of words of wisdom you want to talk about, or let everybody know about your recovery and the whole thing in like a nutshell of what you experienced? Because there's a lot of people listening right now, and I'm not saying they're all first responders, but there's people listening that you've opened some doors for them, and you sort of planted a seed, and maybe some words of advice that you might give someone that might help them in their time of need right now.
Yeah, for sure. I really appreciate you having me on. One of the things that I'll end with is, for an individual that's out there, that's relying on substance to get through the day, no matter the quantity, the quality, no matter what it is, the duration doesn't matter. If the individual feels that their life has become unmanageable
Mm-hmm.
because of a substance, you don't have to be at quote unquote rock bottom to seek help. And there's so many different avenues to seek help. Just reach
Mm-hmm.
out to somebody. It really doesn't matter, a loved one, a best friend, a treatment center, just somebody, and start to fill that Rolodex with numbers that you can call or programs that you can get into, because life is precious, and we need to be here for others. We need
Yep.
to be here for ourselves. Um, and by no means do I mean to sound mushy, but um, life is cool. Struggling to get through life sucks. There's so many different avenues, like I said, that people can take. And if you're an individual that wakes up one day and says, man, I'm really relying on this alcohol to get me through this day. And I'm tired of it. Just make a call. Call anybody. Call me. I don't care. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what it boils down to, because it typically doesn't end up getting any better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it just ends up getting worse until the train just comes off the tracks. And then it's really hard to repair. Sobriety is cool. Having a clear head is cool. And being able to go to work and kind of start all over again, if you will, it was something I never realized could happen to me. It's given me a different outlook, typically for the better.
Yeah.
My compassion fatigue has kind of reinvigorated itself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little more choosy on who I give compassion to, maybe, but it's still there. Yeah, it's just it's a different outlook, and it can be had by anybody, public servant or whatever profession you're in. So it's been a good ride so far, and I look forward to doing the podcast in maybe another 6 months, and we'll see how it is from there.
That sounds
I'm sure
great.
it'll be just fine.
Yeah, we'll make it a date. 6 months from now, you'll be back on. And yeah, just keep on working. I mean, that's all we have to do. And all we have to do is make that first call. Pick up that phone. It's heavier than heck. You know, you've got it in your pocket. If you don't know what a Rolodex is, look it up. You can Google it on your phone. You know, you have all the numbers there. Make a call. There'll be people. There's lots of people to help out there to help. No matter what job you're doing right now, where you're at, if you don't even have a job, you don't have to keep on suffering in silence any longer, because it's a hassle, man. It's just, it doesn't end up well at all. And no matter what your past looks like, you can always rebuild on a positive future.
100%. Again, really appreciate you having me on, Mike.
You bet, Keith.
Look forward to seeing you again real soon.
Right on. Well, stick around for a second, and I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. And if you want to, you can leave a comments in the postings of this. And if you need some information, just get a hold of me, and I'll get you hooked up with Keith. Have a great week and have a great day, and take care of one another. Thanks for listening to Positive Connections Radio on the Mental Health News Radio Network. If you're having issues, you can do it alone. However, you don't have to. It takes courage to ask for help. How can we be there for others if we're unwilling to be there for ourselves? So until next time, be strong, stand up, speak your truth, and break the stigma.